On June 30th, 2021, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned Bill Cosby's sexual assault conviction. Bill Cosby's rape allegations first surfaced in the year 2005. He was sued for sexual assault that year by a woman named Andrea Constand. He paid her a settlement, which included a non-disclosure clause, and the story went away. Until years later, when this happened.
Even worse, because Bill Cosby has the smuggest old black man public persona that I hate. This gets on TV. Pull your pants up, black people. I was on TV in the 80s. I can talk down to you because I had a successful sitcom. Yeah, it was rape women, Bill Cosby, so kind of brings you down a couple notches. I don't curse on stage, but yeah, you're a rapist, so. Dude's image, for the most part, it's public Teflon image. I've done this bit on stage, and people don't believe, people think I'm making it up. I'm like, Bill Cosby, there's a lot of rape allegations. No, you devil. No. That is upsetting. If you didn't know about it, trust me. When you leave here, Google Bill Cosby rape. It's not funny. That more results than Hannibal Buress.
At a show in Philadelphia in February 2014, a comedian named Hannibal Buress roasted Bill Cosby over his all-but-forgotten assault allegations. He'd been doing the routine for months, but at that show, someone recorded it and posted it to the web. Bill found himself trending for all the wrong reasons, and subsequently found himself in court, in significant part because of Buress's comedy bit. In the heat of the controversy, in 2015, Cosby did a comedy set one night where he went in on the people who wanted him to give back his awards because of all the claims against him. And he got at Hannibal Buress's ass too.
Some of the people who feel that I should give back my trophies. Just because you may have heard recently that I allegedly put the pill into people's chocolate. and who is Hannibal Buress? Hannibal Buress! First of all, Hannibal is a caveman's name. And you don't just come on out and push over the apple cart that Hannibal. If I ever see or meet this Hannibal Buress in person, I am going to try to kill this.
Strange thing about that video was that at moments, Bill looks kind of like Eddie Murphy to me. Y'all notice that? Is that just me or... Anyway. Bill was convicted by a Pennsylvania jury on Thursday, April 26, 2018 of drugging and molesting Andrea Constand in 2004. Dozens of other women have also publicly accused the man of assaulting them or attempting to, with some claims dating back as far as the 1960s. In January of 2004, Constand was the director of operations for the Temple University women's basketball team. Dr. Bill Cosby was a distinguished alumnus at the school. Constand had been a college basketball player herself at the University of Arizona, and she played professionally in Europe for a time. According to Constand, Cosby invited her to his home one day in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. There, Cosby offered her 3 pills of what he claimed was herbal medication, which would help her relax, and insisted she take all 3. She said soon she didn't feel well and told Bill so. He then led her to a sofa because she couldn't walk on her own, where he laid her down under the guise of helping her. She said he positioned himself behind her on the sofa, touched her breasts and vaginal area, rubbed his penis against her hand, and digitally penetrated her. She said that she remained in a semi-conscious state throughout the time of this ordeal. She said that at no time was she capable of consent after the pills affected her, and at no time did she consent to Cosby's acts. In 2005, a district attorney declined to bring charges against Cosby, citing insufficient credible and admissible evidence. Constant subsequently filed suit against Cosby. Cosby paid Constant a settlement of $3.4 million in 2006, which included a non-disclosure clause. After the Andrea Constant story became public, another woman, Tamara Green, felt emboldened and brought forward her story after an initial silence. In February of 2005, she spoke to the Today Show and said, among other things, the following. Green said that in the early 70s, when she was a young actress in Los Angeles, she and Cosby both attended a working lunch at a restaurant one day. She was battling the flu. She'd come to the lunch at his insistence, she says. She said there were a number of people at the table, friends of Cosby's, and he said to her, "Yes, you do seem ill. You're slightly feverish. Would you like to have some contact?" Which is a kind of cold medicine. Then, according to Green, Bill went into some sort of office area in the back of the restaurant and he produced 2 capsules in his hand. Green thought nothing of it and took the capsules. And then about 10 minutes after, she said, she was almost face down on the table of this restaurant. According to Green, Bill said, "Oh my, you must be more ill than we believed." She lost all motor control. She was almost unable to hold her head up, she said. She was very, very, very stoned, she said. Green said Bill then took her to her apartment and then took off her clothes, put her in bed, and proceeded to assault her. Cosby has repeatedly denied Green's claims. A woman named Beth Ferrier had a story to tell as well. She told it to Philadelphia Magazine. She met Bill in 1984 in New York. She was a young model. She began an affair with Bill that lasted several months, she said. She said Bill suddenly ended the fling without explanation. Then he called her one night when he was doing a show in Denver, where she lived. She came to the venue and they met backstage. She said Bill offered her a drink and said it would help her relax. She said she felt lightheaded after drinking whatever he had given her. She woke up hours later in the back seat of her car, alone. She didn't know what had happened. Her clothes were disheveled, her bra undone. Security guards showed up and told her that Bill told them to get her home. She confronted him at his hotel. She says he told her that she just had too much to drink. Another accuser, named Barbara Bowman, said in People magazine that in a hotel room in Reno, Nevada in 1986, Cosby took her hand and put his over it and masturbated while his hand covered hers. She said she kept quiet about the incident and continued as Cosby's protege because she didn't think anyone would believe her, considering Cosby's great power and celebrity. Soon she said she was alone with Cosby again in his Manhattan townhouse. She said she was given a glass of red wine and quickly became sick and nauseous. She said she was limp and unable to think straight. She said she woke in a men's t-shirt that did not belong to her and Cosby was in a white robe. She continued. She told the story of a sexual assault she said happened to her in Atlantic City a month or 2 after the Reno incident. Again, after a glass of red wine, she felt completely doped up, she said. She said she somehow made it back to her room, but the next day Cosby summoned her to his suite. After she arrived, Bowman says, Cosby threw her on the bed and braced his arm under her neck so she couldn't move her head. She said he started trying to take his clothes off. She said she recalled the clinking of his belt buckle and that he was trying to take her pants down as she was trying to keep them on. Bowman says that not long after she resisted the assault, Cosby cut off contact with her and had her escorted to the airport for a flight back to Denver. These allegations and others were all made publicly around 2005 to 2006 and were soon forgotten, until Hannibal Buress' 2014 viral routine. 60 women would eventually go on record and accuse Cosby of drugging and/or assaulting them. One of the women who testified against Cosby during the 2018 trial was this woman, Lisa Lott Lublin. She said that she met Cosby in 1989 at a hotel in Las Vegas and that he asked her to perform an improvisation on the pretext of evaluating her acting. The comedian gave her 2 alcoholic drinks that caused her to feel disoriented, she said. Lublin said that a short time later he embraced her. She said her memory of the incident was hazy and that she remembered waking up at her home in the area and not knowing how she got there. She says she believes that she was also sexually assaulted. Former supermodels Janice Dickinson and Beverly Johnson have both alleged that Cosby drugged them also. Dickinson says Cosby molested her subsequent to her drugging. In late 2014, Dickinson told Entertainment Tonight that in 1982 she was at a dinner with Cosby in Lake Tahoe. According to Dickinson, Cosby gave her a pill for her stomach pains, and at some point she passed out. She said that the next morning she woke up and wasn't wearing her pajamas. She said then she remembered being sexually assaulted by Cosby before she blacked out. In a letter to BuzzFeed News, Cosby's attorney, Martin D. Singer, called Dickinson's allegations false and outlandish, and said her claims were contradicted by previous statements she'd made about Cosby in interviews and in a book Dickinson had herself written. Beverly Johnson said in the December 2014 issue of Vanity Fair that she was drugged by Cosby at some time in the mid-80s when she met him to audition for a part on The Cosby Show. She said there was a period in her life when drugs were readily available to her. She had her fun and experimented with her fair share of mood enhancers. She knew by the second sip of the drink that Cosby had given her that she'd been drugged. She said her head became woozy, speech became slurred, and the room began to spin non-stop. Cosby motioned for her to come over to him as though they were really about to act out the scene, she said. He put his hands around her waist, and she managed to put her hand on his shoulder in order to steady herself. As she felt her body go completely limp, she said, her brain switched into automatic survival mode. That meant making sure Cosby understood that she knew exactly what was happening at that very moment. According to her, she let him know that he was a real motherfucker and began to yell at him until he dragged her into the street and tossed her into a cab. She said she held her story back for so long out of concern about the implications of making such a claim against such a highly revered black man and the impact that doing so could have on America's perception of black men. In light of the revived public attention on the case and the avalanche of accusations against Dr. Cosby, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania prosecutors decided in 2015 to review Constand's original 2004 complaint. Cosby's first trial for the sexual assault of Andrea Constand ended in a hung jury in June of 2017. The second trial resulted in his April 2018 conviction on 3 felony counts of aggravated sexual assault on Constand, after which he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in state prison. As observed by Jen Kirby in Vox magazine, the case first went to trial in June 2017 and ended in a mistrial. Then came the Me Too movement. After the New York Times and the New Yorker reported on widespread allegations of sexual abuse by Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein, more and more stories came pouring out about high-profile men who abused their power. 10 months elapsed between the two trials, but Cosby returned to court in a very different climate. And this time, during a 2-week retrial that featured testimony from 5 other women who say Cosby assaulted them too, the jury believed the women. On June 30th of 2021, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania overturned Cosby's conviction on the basis that the prosecution violated Dr. Cosby's right against self-incrimination by using statements at trial that he had made during earlier depositions in civil litigation. The court then made another big statement. The county prosecutor's office couldn't try Mr. Cosby again because of its promise in 2005 not to charge him. In other words, in 2005, when the then Montgomery County District Attorney, Bruce L. Castor Jr., chose not to prosecute Cosby, that decision was final, and the prosecutor's predecessors could not lawfully reverse that decision. Also, it's worth noting that the DA's choice not to prosecute the case early on can be seen as a practical decision even if you believe Constand's allegations against Cosby. He'd chosen not to pursue the case in part because in the years since the alleged assault in 2004, Constand had remained in contact with Cosby. Not only that, but before she had contacted authorities about the assault, she contacted a civil attorney. This would unfortunately reflect poorly on Constand at trial. All of this unfortunately hurt her credibility as a witness and damaged their prospects for winning the case. This is footage of Cosby arriving at his Pennsylvania home following his release. Bill Cosby has always proclaimed his innocence, and in a statement on Twitter after his release, he said the following: "I have never changed my stance nor my story. I have always maintained my innocence. Thank you to all my fans, supporters, and friends who stood by me through this ordeal. Special thanks to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law. Bill Cosby's wife, Camille, has remained by his side throughout the many years this story has persisted. And this may be the end of the story, as the statute of limitations has run out for most, if not all, of Bill's alleged victims. But a silver lining to this entire ordeal is that it brought to us this moment of television history.
Can I ask you this, because and please, I don't mean to be crude, okay?
Yeah.
Because I know some of you, and you said this last night, that you lied to him and said, I have an infection, and if you rape me, or if you have intercourse with me, then you will probably get it and give it to your wife.
Right.
And you said he made you perform oral sex.
Right.
You know, there are ways not to perform oral sex if you don't want to do it.
I was kind of stoned at the time, and quite honestly, that didn't even enter my mind.
Yeah.
Now I wish it would have.
Right.
But
meaning the using of the teeth, right?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I didn't even think of it.
Biting. So,
I'd very much like to know your thoughts on Cosby's case being thrown out, about his guilt or innocence, and about the stories that his accusers have told. Please leave a comment.